Welcome, everybody, to a bonus interview for our series, Forming the Future, your guide to raising children who pursue the good, true, and beautiful. I'm Natalie Stillwell, and today I'm interviewing Elisabeth Jordan. She runs a nonprofit called The Human Impact here in Dallas, Texas. Elisabeth, would you mind telling everybody a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I am a wife and a mom to a 1.5-year-old son named John. And I was born and raised in Dallas, lived in Memphis, where my husband's from, for a couple of years. Was in business in my 20s and lost a job. And that's how I ended up working with this nonprofit, The Human Impact, on the streets with people who are homeless.
Wow. And I've had a chance to talk with you outside of the interview a little bit. Could you tell us more about how, your specific journey and how God guided you into this ministry?
Yes. So like I said, I was working in business and was pretty happy. I was in the music and entertainment business and flying to Nashville once a month and having great dinners and having a lot of fun. And I ended up losing that job. And it was an incredibly humbling experience. And I sort of woke up after that and thought, my whole life I've kind of been just doing my plan for my life, just doing the next step, or sort of what I thought I should do, like, high school, college, getting a good job, trying to get better jobs, trying to make more money. And I was kind of leveled all of a sudden and didn't know what to do next. And I actually took some time. I was working some part-time jobs, but just took some time to think about what was next for me. And I read some really important books during that time that really formed me. One is called The Heavenly Man, and it's about the Christian church in China. And they get to see God do a lot of amazing things there. And I thought, why haven't I seen that here in the United States? And then another book about a girl who is younger than me, who she didn't go to college. She was from Nashville, and she ended up moving to Uganda and has adopted like more than 10 Ugandan orphans. And so I started to ask God what was his plan for my life, because I got to see through these stories people following not their own plan for their life, but being willing to do what God was asking them to do. And so I felt this prompting to find out the poorest area of Dallas, and Dallas is the poorest area of Dallas. Parts of it are poorer than the Ninth Ward in New Orleans. And I grew up in a really affluent area and pretty insulated area of the city. And it was really shocking to me that there was such poverty in my city, because when I thought of poverty, I thought of poverty overseas. And over the next 6 months, I started going down to South Dallas and meeting with different nonprofits. And then this one person invited me to come meet some homeless people. And that I was interested. I was intrigued that I wasn't just going to meet with someone who ran a nonprofit, but I was actually going to go meet the people that they served. Mm-hmm. And so it was this little corner between a bus stop and a homeless shelter. And I was pretty terrified, to tell you the truth. It was really out of my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But I went down one day and sat on this corner and shook dirty hands and took in all the smells. And these were things that weren't super comfortable to me. And there was something in me that day that came alive. And so for all the fear that I had, that I carried with me, and it didn't go away for a while, and I still have it sometimes. But for all that fear, there was something so life-giving. And one of the ways I've identified it now is I grew up with so much, and I grew up with people with nice cars and pretty houses and nice clothes, and everyone's always put together. But I felt lonely and alone, and I was hurting. And here I was all of a sudden with people who had lost the cars and the houses, and a lot of them their families and their friends, and they were pretty much as stripped down as you could get. And there was this level of openness and authenticity that I experienced that day that I think compelled me to return. I was very intrigued by this group of people who society has outcasted for some reason, but they had something to offer me, and I think I sensed that early on.
Now, when I first saw anything about the Human Impact, I remember images of you with like wearing a baby and cutting hair. What's the story there?
that again was the question?
Well, I'm just curious, were you cutting hair for the homeless and bringing your children along with you?
Yeah. So yes, we try to involve families in the work, and we have in the fall and spring, we have this thing we call Street Side Salon, which is a pop-up barbershop. And I don't cut hair, but thank you for thinking I can. You would not want me to cut your hair or anyone else's. But yeah, my son, especially when he was little, I would wear him in the little wrap, and he would come with me. And then when we do Saturday events, my husband will bring him down. And it's a really bonding thing with my friends who are homeless, because so many of them are parents. And I think a lot of times with people who are homeless, we think, I don't know what to talk to them about. And it's like, oh my goodness, we share this love of our children that's so deep and so rich. And for many of them, like those are the best times of their lives, when they were raising their babies. And so it's really sweet and special to share my son with them, my husband with them.
I am curious along those lines. How is it that so many people end up on the streets? If you're saying that you meet many people who've already had a full life with raising children, how does it all change?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And one that I had no idea the answer to. And I think there are a lot of different answers, and it's different for each person. So maybe there are two things I'll focus on. One is a lot of people who are homeless were raised in poverty. So it was hard for me to imagine, with all the people that care for me, how I could ever become homeless, because even if I lost my job and my husband lost his job, there are so many people who would take us in, if not family, friends. But a lot of people, maybe their network is smaller to begin with, and then even their family or friends that do care for them, they don't have the financial resources to take them in. So that's one thing that I think, it's just like starting from a different place. And so being closer to homelessness, just naturally. And then the other one is almost everyone who, if they start to really tell me their real story of when they became homeless, there's almost always loss involved. So there's almost always some kind of grief, either a divorce or a death, or more than one, back to back. And a lot of people say, like, oh, it's addiction, but there are so many people in homes with addictions. And I definitely think there are a lot of people on the streets who struggle with addiction, but probably, I don't know if that's really the cause as much as people think that it is the cause.
One thing I know I see a lot when I'm just driving down the road, or even when I lived in DC, and I'd be walking on the streets, these people walk a lot more around there. I would encounter people that obviously were struggling with some sort of mental illness. Is that something you encounter? And, is that a factor for getting people out on the streets?
Yes, there are some people who have pretty significant mental illness issues. But sometimes it's hard to tell, because I'm not sure if someone is high or if they're really struggling with mental illness. And so a lot of times those two kind of go hand in hand, because a lot of people with mental illness self-medicate through drugs or alcohol. So it's a kind of toxic combination if you're thinking about mental illness and then treating it in that way. But once again, it's a lower percentage than I think maybe is perceived. And maybe the more vocal people who are homeless are those with a mental illness. And a lot of people don't get to experience all the incredible people with amazing hearts and amazing stories and beautiful faith to offer, who are homeless.
Yeah. So do you find that a lot of the people you work with, they want to improve, they want to be off of the streets, but they just really need someone to step in and offer a hand?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think that most people, if you dug deep enough, would tell you that they absolutely don't want to be there. Like, they pictured a different life for themselves. I think you have some people who have been there so long that at some point they lost hope, and there's a level of despair or like acceptance of this is just the way life is. And so at first glance, they might not tell you that they really want anything to change, but if you were to develop a relationship with them, you would find that they had hopes and dreams and longings. And I would say absolutely that one-on-one, that investment in the life of someone who is homeless is the means by which really successful change happens. But that's sort of our philosophy of life, is that change happens through relationship.
Yeah.
So
How is it that you have begun to form these relationships and you day after day focus on really digging deep and being close to those who are on the streets?
how did it come about, you mean?
Yeah, what sort of things are you doing, that you're committed to doing every day?
Mm-hmm. So like I said, I didn't grow up around poverty. And when I first got to the streets, I think I realized, like, I don't know any solutions for anybody because I don't know what this life is like. And so for me to come in and be like, hey, I've got the answer it's a little arrogant. And I think I learned that I need to be, and this is definitely something that we maintain, but to be a listener. And a lot of people who are homeless don't have anyone to listen to them. And one of the best things I can do is sort of step back and let that person share whatever is on their heart or that they need to share. And so the foundation of everything we do, so we help people take the practical steps, get the help that they need to move off of the streets. But the foundation of what we do is that listening. It's that one-to-one relationship building, trust building, long-term kind of work.
Could you tell us any, I guess, success stories, if you will, of people who've overcome their situation on the streets?
Yes. I think one of the most interesting ones is I have a friend named Greg, and we met 2.5 years ago. So I've been doing this work 3.5 years, and I offered to help him. He was struggling with an addiction and living in a homeless encampment. And he said, no, I got to do this by myself. Like, if I'm going to pull myself together, I'm going to do it by myself. And I sort of laughed at him like, good luck, because it's hard to change alone. But sure enough, like, we did develop a relationship with him. He came to our street side salon. He came, we had a Bible study on the streets. He came to the Bible study, and he got clean on his own. And over the next year, he ended up getting an apartment, getting a job, and he was doing really well. And we were meeting with him weekly. And then he was supposed to show up for something one weekend, and he didn't show up, and found him next week on the streets. And it was a heartbreaking experience because he had come so far for so long. And this man, like, his smile lights up a room. Like, he's just a charismatic kind of person. You just want to be around him. And so it wasn't just it's like this loss of this person who he is. It's this, addiction can sort of mask the image of God in someone. It's never lost, but it's sort of like, it's harder to see. And so there was just this longing for him to come back out of that. And over the next 10 months, we saw him just through the work, and continued to develop a relationship with him. And he started to tell us, like, why are you sticking with me? And we're like, because we love you. And over time, he just said that he was learning what unconditional love was. And on October 13th, got a call, and he said, I'm ready to come out, come off of the streets again. And that was after he was in a pretty volatile relationship, and had some significant injuries that had happened, and had gotten to the point where the month before had been genuinely afraid for his life. So he got off of the streets and moved in. Well, he went through rehab, moved into a sober living home. And part of our model is this kind of mentorship investment that we do with people who are really ready. So it's accountability, it's structure, but it's really just through loving someone, right? And so we meet with him every week, and he had a short time when he relapsed. So the last time he relapsed, it took him 10 months to reach out, and this time it was a few days. And so it was pretty exciting, even though it was hard those days he disappeared, to be like, oh my gosh, that you're loved and accepted. And he says that shame is what keeps him from coming back. So it's so beautiful to like get to walk through that with him. And so that's one story.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. That is so necessary for all of us to have someone to be there for us when we fall down and we're stuck in our shame. But even more so when there's an addiction, I'm sure, and not a support system. That's so beautiful. One thing I'm curious, we all see people on the side of the roads in some form or fashion, and a lot of times we do want to help. But I know as a woman, a lot of times I feel nervous and afraid. We all have the questions, where will my money donation go? And am I helping or am I hurting? What are some tips for us to think through how we can help those we encounter on the streets?
Well, first, I love to encourage people. Like, I love that our hearts are moved when we see someone on the side of the street. And so I think there is this tension that you talk about of like, I don't really know how to help that person. I know I care. Like, something is moved in me, and I think we should celebrate that. Like, you're alive. There's something that's saying to you, I want to help another person. And people will tell you different things. Some people will say, never give money. We don't say that because we like to listen to nudges from God about how to help an individual. There's an issue of safety, especially being a woman. There are just risks that I might not take that my husband would take. But my favorite thing to do, and I don't do this all the time, but when I sort of feel that prompting, I will roll down my window and I'll actually put my hand out and I'll shake someone's hand and I'll just introduce myself. And sometimes I'll get to have a conversation with them about what they need. And sometimes I have an extra granola bar in my car and can hand it over. Or, there have been times when I've went and gotten someone a meal. But I think that it is listening to that prompting and maybe trying to make a human connection instead of feeling like there has to be something that you have to do. But just connect with that person as a person. And people are surprised when you ask them for their name. They're not used to being treated that way. And it can be something powerful.
And, just from a Christian perspective too, like, what's the role of prayer when you're out there on the streets? Do you find that a lot of people are happy to be prayed with, or are people of faith, even though they're in a tough situation?
So prayer is foundational to the work that we do. We wouldn't be here without prayer. And we actually have like a prayer group that meets together, and we send out requests pretty frequently. And if someone wanted to get involved, that's one way that people could get involved. But we try to let people lead the sort of God talk, because people who are homeless are really used to someone coming out and telling them how to change their life. And they've probably been asked to convert to Christianity like 500 times. And we're really sensitive to that. Beyond that, like, okay, let's say someone just randomly came up to me and said, you need Jesus in your life. I'd be like, you don't know me. Like, you don't know anything about me. And so we try to just love people where they are and let them open the door. And people are so curious why we're there. And if we're asked the story of how we came, it's like, well, I saw Jesus. I reread the Gospels, and I realized Jesus spent most of his time with people that no one else cared about. And Mother Teresa, in her writings that were published after her death, she calls the poor his poor. And so we would say that we follow Jesus to his poor, and there we get to experience him. And so in my faith personally, I had gone to church and read my Bible and prayed my whole life, but I hadn't had a vibrant experience of God in the way that I get to literally every time I'm there. Like, I feel like I meet with Jesus when I'm there. And so it's an absolutely transformative kind of thing.
And it's helping you as well.
I mean, yes. And that's the whole point of, so it's called the human impact, because we're trying to link cultures that are different, people who are homeless and people who aren't, because they may have physical or practical needs, but we have other needs. And what we end up seeing happening is that both people get transformed. And we've launched this advocacy group for people who want to be involved. to sort of be able to plug in their area of gifting to be able to help someone who's homeless kind of one act at a time, as opposed to having to sign up for a 2-year mentorship. If you're a physician's assistant, you can sign up on our health and wellness chain. And when we have a health and wellness need, we email it out. And so on a case-by-case basis, then if you have the bandwidth, you can say, hey, I want to help this person. And so it's kind of what we've been doing informally the last couple of years, but we've just launched this group, and it's really exciting.
That's fantastic, because so many of us have gifts that we want to share, and we want to help in a way that we feel comfortable and we feel safe. And now you've created this outlet for people. And I know that you're based out of Dallas. Are there any similar ministries around the country that you know of, or ways that people elsewhere could plug into something like this?
Someone could start the Human Impact Boston or the Human Impact to Seattle. I think that the model we're developing is really just for marginalized groups of people. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be homeless people, but truly, if someone said, hey, I have a heart for refugees, mm-hmm. or like I care about women involved in sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. I don't know, if someone wants to do what we're doing somewhere else, I think it's easily replicable. And
they could reach out to you and
please.
Help. That would
you
be
can
awesome.
Train with us,
yeah.
Come spend some time with us. And I would love for there to be other groups of people doing similar kind of work, different places, because it's really just people connecting with people. It's very simple.
Yeah, and God led you very specifically to the homeless here in Dallas, and who knows who else watching might have a call towards another group of people that really need that support, who will also change your life. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I wonder, a lot of times, at least in the Christian world, we hear about mission trips, and we'll raise a bunch of money and we'll go overseas mm-hmm. to help. And that's beautiful. And there are many people overseas to be helped and who can impact us in amazing, transformative ways. But at the same time, in our own backyard is a huge, huge mission field. Do you have anything to say to encourage, like, especially, moms and families, for finding and just getting out there in the mission field in their own backyard?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing I would say is, I think a lot of times when we think about helping, it's this huge thing, and we have no idea how to go about it. It's like, there's so much poverty, I don't know even where to start. And so what I like to say is, like, baby steps lead to real change. And this is true for the homeless too. And what I feel like I did with this work is I took baby steps. Like I went to the streets one time, I went back one other time, and it's a very slow transformation. And I think real transformation happens that way. And I would encourage people to try to connect somewhere where they can build that relationship. And from a Christian perspective, like, this is the church. This is people who are different, maybe on the outside, or have different life experiences, coming together mutually to help meet each other's needs. And there's this, saying, let it, bringing heaven to earth, basically, this idea of, yes, heaven is coming, but we have this opportunity to partner with God to make this earth better for people. And so I would say, if you can meet one person and help one person, start small. And, there are days when I go out to the streets where I leave overwhelmed with the magnitude of the need. And I'll pray and just say, like, are we doing anything good? And almost every time, the next time we're out there, there is some moment that I have with one person where it's like, for that person today, even if I never see them again, that moment was holy. That moment was good. And I would encourage people to think in those terms of that, the moment that they get with someone, the little things we can offer.
Yeah. And I think about our Lord's words that, whatever we do for the least among us, we're doing it for him, and it won't be forgotten. Hopefully it will not be forgotten by them, and it will also make an impact in their lives. But no good thing we do is unseen. What is the value of involving your children in serving the needy and the poor in our own backyards and elsewhere? Like, why should we do this in front of our children, or even with our children?
Because I think it's one thing for us to talk about our ethic I think it's one thing for us to say that we believe in God and that we care about how he lives, and we live with certain morals or convictions. And I think it's another thing for our children to witness our lives transformed by the God that we love. And God's character is such that he is the defender of the vulnerable. And that's who he is from the beginning of Scripture all the way through the end, which means, therefore, to be like God is to defend those who are vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's the greatest insurance for our children to have a vibrant relationship themselves with God, for them to watch us, not just talk about it, but to live the kind of life that we're being asked to live. So to me, there's nothing more significant. I mean, there's nothing more important than that my son is a part of the life of my homeless friends, that they know him and that he knows them. Because I would like it, what I say is important, but I would like it when he gets older to be much less of what I said and more of what he witnessed. And that includes making a lot of mistakes. It's not like I have it figured out. I don't at all. But it's inviting him into the mess of life with me, mm-hmm. And into the mess of other people's lives. And that's what I hope he gets.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a question, and I'm not trying to talk politics per se, mm-hmm. but I know we live in a really politically heated climate right now after our election, and there's a lot of talk about cutting spending. So, and also as a Catholic, like myself, we have these social teachings, and one of them is promoting something called subsidiarity, where those who are closest to the problem really have the responsibility and the privilege of stepping in and addressing the issues probably more efficiently and more accurately than, let's say, higher up a chain of bureaucracy. Do you see any sort of like government aid on the local, state, or federal level coming into the homeless to help them that's really, really working well? Or are you seeing that making that human impact on a local level is really where it's at?
Well, first of all, I love the Catholic principle of subsidiarity, and it's really been influential to me in how we work. Because it is true, the closer we are to the problem, the more effective we can be. As far as the government's role in helping people, I think that the government must step in when, quite frankly, the church isn't doing its job. Mm. And so I think that policies and all of that are in place, and government aid is in place because families with means aren't adopting poor families. And so welfare is a cheap substitute for relationship, right? Like, to get a check every month is very different than a family partnering with a poor family to say, hey, we're gonna fix your car when it gets broken, and we're gonna help watch your kids once a week while you work. And so I wish that we were doing that. And I wish that the need for these kinds of programs was less, but they're absolutely essential, and they do help people. And maybe there could be more of all of it, right? More of individuals and families investing in the lives of people who have physical needs, and more government subsidized housing that enables people who are homeless to get off of the streets. But I definitely don't think it's one or the other, because unfortunately we don't live in a perfect world. But we can work towards it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And is there anything that we can do to encourage, ourselves and our neighbors to step up to the plate more and help those in need around us?
I think, like I said, it's like examining, asking, praying if you pray. What am I passionate about? Who do I care about? And you don't have to know right away, but you can start to learn about different groups of people who are in need. And then, like I said, it's taking one step. It's facing one fear. It's not trying to tackle all the issues at once. And I don't know if I fully answered your question.
No, that's, I mean, that's a good part of it, is just asking and being open to finding where you can help. Because we can't all do everything, right?
Not
But we
possible.
all have a big heart, and I'm sure that if we're sincere, God's going to help us find a way to serve Him by serving others, and to be transformed. I totally understand what you mean when you say, you feel like you're encountering Christ, and you're being touched in these deep ways. I've done some sidewalk counseling ministry to women outside of abortion facilities, and there's just something about meeting people in their darkest, most painful place, and it's really, you can just feel, the spiritual battle, and it's there's, I don't know how to describe it. You just feel God's love.
You do.
Is
So
there.
there's this psalm that says, and I think about this a lot because I feel the same way, like they're holy places and they're dark. But there's a Psalm 139 that says, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. And I think that there's this very holy, sacred exchange that happens when we, as the image bearers of Christ, go into these dark and lonely and painful places. That's really amazing.
Yeah. One other question I have before we wrap up is, as a mother, I'm sure you're busy, and you're a wife too, and here you are starting this nonprofit, and I know it keeps you on your toes, but do you really think other moms, if they feel the call, could start something like what you're doing?
I know they can. I mean, I absolutely know. I think that the more moms, the more women who are following and pursuing their passions, the better the world is. We have something unique and beautiful to offer that I think that the world needs. There's a tenderness and a joy and a passion for our children that, translated to other people who are in need, could be transformative in their lives. And so there's nothing you can't do. There's nothing, you might have to start small, but there are so many people who need you.
Yeah, it's so inspiring what you're doing. I do want to ask, how can people contact you, stay in touch with what you're doing? I also heard you might be hiring soon because you are so busy with your beautiful nonprofit work. So whatever you can tell us would be awesome.
Yes. So we have a website and we share stories there. And so if you're not in Dallas, we actually have virtual ways that you can help us meet needs. So we have these blog posts that we call Meet the Needs, and we share someone's story and we share their need. And so you can get involved virtually. If you are in Dallas, we have started this advocacy group, and there's a page on our website that's about the advocacy group, and you can sign up to help in your area of gifting. Or if you're not quite sure if you want to sign up yet, we have another quarterly meeting, on April 25th that you can attend, and we would just love to have you there, and anyone else that you want to bring. And then there are just really hands-on ways. You can come to the streets with us. We have an open time on Thursdays, Thursday mornings, where I'm going now, where people who are curious about the work and want to get a feel for it can come be with us, and sort of in the safety of being, with us, can experience what it's like to be around people who are homeless and talk to them and all of that. So anyway, and if you want to start your own branch, just let me know. So contacting us, you can email me. My email is elizabeth@thehumanimpact.org. My name is spelled Elisabeth. But I would love to hear from anyone who is interested.
And I highly encourage you, please, to check out her website. It is very moving to see the stories and the people that are being served. I think it will help you find your way to serve in your own special way in the world. So, Elisabeth, thank you for what you're doing.
We are hiring, like you said.
Yes.
Yes. They're going to be 2 part-time positions, which actually might be great for a mom who wants some supplemental income and would like to participate in a way. So one is going to be like an administrative communications marketing role, and one is going to be a front-facing role on the streets with me. So sorry to add that in at the end.
No, that's awesome. Yes, and I pray you find the right people, and who knows, someone watching.
Maybe.
So good to talk with you, Elisabeth.
Thank you, Natalie.
Have a wonderful day out there today, loving on God's children.
Thank you.
All right. See you later.